Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to recording number 8 of the Ryan Trend podcast, brought to you from my backyard. Pretty chill out here. I actually missed recording last week, so had to make sure that I got this one in. But I look forward to this. There's been a lot happening in my world and the world around me. Some interesting things that I've been thinking about. Before I get deep into it, there is a train that runs through my backyard, so there's a chance that at some point the horns of a train might sound, so just a heads up. But anyways, I'll start off with the day. Today was actually pretty productive. It's been nice. I got up fairly early. I got up fairly early. Made a cup of coffee, which was cool. I haven't had a chance to do that the whole week. What did I do first? Kind of made a plan for the day. Recap some things from the week that I got done. Some things that I need to follow up on, which is usually how I start the weekend. And then what did I do after that? Oh yeah, I had a training session at 10, so went to do that. One kid showed up, which was really cool. This one is he's a 5th grader, and he's great. Listens really well, does everything that's asked of him, and he actually has good sense of the game. He's crafty. He's a small one at the moment, but he has a good shot, and he knows how to get to his shot. And even if you defend him, the first or second option, he's still able to find a way to get the shot off. And again, it's actually pretty decent. So yeah, it was good to work out with him today. It was foggy, so that was kind of cool at the park. We were at the park, but the sun did come out towards the end. And we played one-on-one at the end of the workout. We played 3 games, which was really cool. And I'm actually coming off a sprained ankle. I sprained it last Wednesday. Probably it was like a mild to medium sprain. In the moment it was pretty rough, but over the next couple of days, it wasn't as swollen as I had anticipated. It wasn't as swollen as I anticipated, and I also got to use this scooter from one of my coworkers. She actually broke her foot during the last school year, so she had a scooter, and I had asked her if I could borrow it. It's funny, I actually borrowed this scooter 2 times. Because I sprained my same ankle actually, earlier this year, around March. In March. And that one, it was a pretty bad one, so that one took me 5-6 weeks before I was really up and jogging even. So that was a long one. I was able to jog pretty well, move around pretty well today when I was playing with my guy. So I felt good. It's still not 100%, definitely not flying around like I typically do, but it's looking pretty good. And so after that, I went to get some lunch. I went out for drinks last night with some coworkers. So we had a few, and then you know how it is when you wake up after a few, a little bit thirsty, head kind of throbbing, whatever. It wasn't that kind of night for me, but I did have a few. So got some hot soup at this Vietnamese restaurant that I've been liking a lot recently. I actually tried something different, a suggestion of my dad's actually. He just picked something random on the menu. Essentially, it's like how would you say? It's an egg noodle soup. So the egg noodles are thin, and then you've got some bok choy in there, and then you've got some marinated beef. The exact cut, I'm not exactly sure, but it's nice and chewy. And they actually had a good marinade on it. And it's a soup, so you get the broth as well. So it was really good. And I like egg noodles. It's different than the pho. So that was cool. After that, what did I do? I went straight home. unpacked my car. My car has kind of been a hot mess recently, just because I'm always flying from place to place and I really have a chance to get organized, but I try my best to stay organized. So it was nice taking a minute to clean that up, get everything situated and put away, throw some trash out. Went inside, got some dishes done. So anyways, that's kind of been the day. So far so good, pretty productive. Getting things done. And then I wanted to do this recording at this time, but when I was doing laundry, it was giving me some trouble. So I was hoping to actually do it like at 3:45, so I could, watch the sunset a little bit. But it's going away at the moment. You know how it is, getting dark quick these days, but it's all good. And it's a little bit cold out here, so I may move in at some point. Ooh, that's another interesting thing that I can mention that happened today. I actually, right when I woke up, I decided, okay, I'm just going to go outside in just my boxers. It's part of this thing for me that I've been learning more about, hearing more about a lot recently. I kind of enjoyed learning about it, which is cold therapy. And most commonly, you'll probably hear about it like in the form of an ice bath. So, just a traditional big tub of ice, or people now have like, machines for this that it cools the water to a specific temperature, it creates ice for you. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, somebody that I listen to quite often was talking about how it was the first thing he did right when he woke up. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to just try that. I had tried this before, maybe like a couple weeks ago. So I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. And another thing I like to do in general, I've probably mentioned this, at some point, is get sunlight the first thing in the day. Which is another thing I've actually haven't, like, just sit in the backyard or wherever I am and expose myself to the sun for like 5-10 minutes. It's actually really nice, really, therapeutic, good meditative time. So I enjoy it, and there's a bunch of physiological benefits that I would highly recommend people look into. A good place to do that would be Andrew Huberman, big proponent of it, really cool guy, really smart. Science-based, so yeah. And that was fun. It was pretty tough, I'm not gonna lie, but it did feel great, and it gave me like the morning wake up that I needed. Because again, after even just a few drinks, sometimes you can wake up pretty sluggish and kind of be slow throughout getting kick-started for the day. So that really woke me up, got me going. Again, got some productivity stuff done before heading out to my basketball session. But anyways, that was pretty much the day. It's been good so far, and here I am right now getting this done. The week, I think I'll speak to the week a little bit as well. It was the last week we were in school before a winter break, which is probably the case for a lot of people if you're in school at this point. And interestingly enough, it just felt really busy. It wasn't like we were doing a lot of schoolwork necessarily, but there was a lot of things surrounding, just events that we had to get ready for, or, meetings that we had to do. In addition to all this, another thing that's been big on my plate at the moment is figuring out a basketball team for our school. So, for context, this is my second year at this school, and last year we were able to have a basketball team for the middle school. For the middle school during the winter league, and that was cool. We also did one during the summer for both 7th and 8th grade and 5th and 6th graders. We wanted to try to do the same thing for this coming winter league, and we had been communicating with the admin for a couple months now, trying to figure this out, and it never really got finalized until recently, so it's been a big, just back and forth, and I'm sure anybody that's worked in really in any kind of thing, you can probably imagine what it's like when you're hoping to execute on something, but things here and there keep coming up, or something comes up that delays the process, delays the thinking, whatever the case may be. So kind of ran into that, and given that it's like the last week before winter break, obviously you want to make sure everything is settled and moving in the right direction so that you can kind of put this off to the side over the break and not think about it so much. But there's a lot of moving pieces in this, so I won't get too much into the details just because it's not too relevant here. I guess the point that I'm trying to, or what I want to share about it is, it was an ordeal. Again, back and forth, trying to figure things out. And, it's one of those situations where in your head, the process has been laid out before. We're just trying to do the same thing. And you feel like it got a little bit more complicated than it needed to be. But so be it. I told myself, regardless, the kids are gonna play basketball, which is like my main goal, because there are a lot of kids that I've already coached, like from the summer and from last year even, that do want to play basketball again. So if I can help make that happen by any means, I'm definitely gonna try it. So yeah, that's been a big thing to just figure out. And then also a lot of the kids have been sick over the past 2 weeks. So really this whole week was dedicated to them making up work, getting right, anything that they were missing or needed to redo potentially, which was good. I think most kids took advantage of it. Still, the frustrating part is some of them didn't. So yeah, and then there was quite a bit of behavior stuff too. Like, they were pretty rowdy, but to be expected last week of school before the break. And yeah, it really is an interesting situation to be in, like teaching sixth graders, like an interesting time in their life, an interesting context, right? Like a lot of these kids, and again, this is not just unique to them. I'm sure it's all across the country, all across the world even. For the past few years, kids have had a weird situation in school, in and out, mask, no mask, learning through computers, and just all kinds of other stuff. So the social dynamics of everything. Yeah, it's been an interesting time. And so to be teaching sixth graders at this school at this time, it's all kind of a big, it's a melting pot of just everything, which is really interesting. But I made it. I made it. It's been a whirlwind, I'm not gonna lie. I guess for more context, it's in Stockton. And yeah, we'll just kind of leave it at that. It was a busy week. I also had a lot of basketball stuff, basketball training. So at the moment, I'm doing 2 classes at the gym that we generally train at, a beginner's class and an intermediate class. So that's been cool. Meeting a lot of new kids in that too, and just teaching more people is really fun because everybody's different, everybody moves different, everybody has a different interest in basketball, but ultimately they all want to learn the sport, get better at it, try to figure out how to play. So it's cool to be in a position to help, and just also at the same time, like, promote myself, promote my business, because I am essentially the business. It's just me, right? So it's been good. It's also been tough. At the same time, like, given that it's beginners and a lot of these kids have never really done much, I want to say, like, either through formal sports or just really playing in general, trying to get them to understand their body and how they move and all that kind of stuff is quite interesting. But it's been a good time. I've met a lot of new parents that have also been interested in, just me as a trainer in general and wanting to expose their child to more of my workouts and my sessions. Like, that's actually been a really motivating and rewarding feeling, fulfilling to see that, yeah, like, I like the way you approach exercise and movement and training and basketball. So I would like to put my kid, with you on the days that we're available. So I've had some good conversations there, which is really cool. And to be honest, I'm getting a little chilly, so I'm probably gonna move in soon. Yeah, we'll make that happen in a little bit. So yeah, basketball has been in motion. It's been cool to continue to push on that front. Got one more week of this current class, and then take a break from that, maybe a week or two, and then keep it rolling for whoever is interested. So overall, the week, it's been pretty good. Yeah, honestly, let's see. I'll just cut it right here so I can transition to inside. That was actually a very productive break. I was able to use the restroom, get set up on my desk. I got this heater right next to me, which is really nice. I opened up my laptop and I got this video of an endless library playing with some ambient sounds, which is really nice. Just some background stuff just to set the vibe. Opened up my laptop, so I got some notes on things that I'll discuss here. But yeah, anyways, what I had been talking about prior to the break was just the week overall. And I guess one thing that I did want to mention is yesterday, it was Friday, obviously. Well, yesterday was Friday, not obviously. But we did it was pretty much a very chill day for the kids. I let them bring in food, anything they wanted. Most of them brought chips, Capri Suns, cookies, cupcakes, typical, which is against the rules, but honestly, whatever. Let them do what they want, I guess. And yeah, live life a little bit. So that was cool. I brought in some tea, green tea, jasmine green tea, some chai, but nobody had chai. And we had hot cocoa. So I was over there cooking up some hot cocoa and some tea, which was cool and a nice gesture. One of the students' moms brought in some pizza for lunch. So that was nice, some pizza and some garlic bread. Students enjoyed that. It was a good time. Yeah, like I said, a lot of chips, a lot of Capri Sun, but it was a good day, a good way to finish the week. Surprisingly, it took a long time, and it felt like it went long, but it's just because we didn't really have much to do. But it was good. We watched a couple of things. We watched Home Alone 2 for a little bit. We watched another one that's animated, like these two elves. They're like the kids next door type of situation. They're just, they're on some secret mission. They got all kinds of cool gadgets, so that was cool to watch. It's on Disney Plus, is where the kids told me about it. But yeah, so, and then on top of all that, they had like I guess you could say a rally where they, let the kids play outside. They got a jumper, all kinds of snacks, and kind of just let the kids play. But unfortunately, I had to stick around until after school to cover the kids that weren't able to go, either because some behavior problems or they weren't in uniform. So that was interesting. I got to see some kids that I've worked with and met, interacted with quite often. Last year when I had been subbing, just all over this place, all over this school, these schools actually. So that was nice to see them and catch up. We listened to music. A funny story about that. So I was like, oh, what do you guys listen to? Woo, woo. And then I had asked them if they knew who Jimi Hendrix was. And I don't think anybody was like, yeah, I've heard of him before. Not even like a guess. So what did I play? I played All Along the Watchtower. And so I told them prior, rate this song 0 to 10. Tell me what you think. And about half the room would say oh, that was a 0, that was a 1, -1, whatever, just straight up hating on it. And then half of the room was like, oh, I really like that. That was like a 7, that was a 10, that was a 9. So that kind of really, that was really interesting for me to observe and participate. And then we played some other stuff. But yeah, that was a Friday. It was a long day actually. And then I went to go do a training session in Manteca. So I teach in Stockton, but a lot of my basketball stuff is in Manteca. Also Stockton, but mostly Manteca. So I finished that. Had a really good conversation with one of the parents after, like, just I had mentioned it at the beginning, but just expressing gratitude and being I don't know, just saying like I see improvement in my son. I like what he's doing. I like the challenges that you're giving him. So we're gonna keep going as long as you're around. You're the one teaching. We like it. So that was really cool. Yeah, that was really cool actually. And then another big win I'll share here, because celebrate the wins, man, the little ones too. But while I was doing my session yesterday, excuse me, one of the parents that was sitting on the sides had run into just a friend, I want to say, and he had asked like, oh, what's going on over here, woo woo. And he pretty much was like, oh yeah, this is my son. This is the trainer that he practices with, once a week, twice a week. He's pretty good. Check him out. Here's his website. And I haven't heard from the person yet, but it sounded like from what he told me this morning, because I saw him yesterday and today, he was like, oh yeah, they're going to reach out to you soon. So just wanted to let you know. And regardless if it happens or not, I just thought that was really cool that this parent that I currently work with, his son, was able to take that moment and was willingly like, yeah, like check him out, see, hit him up, see what's up. It's really cool to have somebody vouch for you like that. So yeah, that was really nice. And then once I finished my session, I drove back to Stockton to meet up again with my coworkers to just hang out. We had went to a sushi place. Like I said, we had some drinks, a few drinks, and it was a good time. Really just hanging out, talking about the week, talking about teaching, talking about all the troubles that we've had. Man, and there's definitely it's a cathartic, honestly, just being able to express yourself openly with people that really understand what you're going through. And just the whole situation of being a teacher at this school. So that was nice. Yeah, we had a good time connecting, really. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much the week. And today it's kind of been mostly a chill day, like I said, mostly errands, but kind of taking it easy, getting this done. Because, I need to, like I've been mentioning so many times, is really just staying consistent. Yeah, just staying consistent and seeing, there's really something to doing something repetitively over time that is, like, good for you. It's like exercise, right? Like, you don't just exercise for a couple weeks here and there or a couple months here and there. Like, if you can make it a lifestyle, like, it really does something dramatic to you as a human being, to the brain, to the way you see and approach life. I know that sounds kind of grandiose, but again, the idea is like, I'm going to do this regularly, right? Whether it be meditation or cold therapy or a hard exercise or going for a walk, whatever your thing is, to say that I'm going to do this regularly, I think there's a lot of power to seeing like, okay, after I've done this so many times, like, this is the way that it has impacted my life. And it's really something to marvel at, I think, when you have done it for quite some time and you can look back and like, yeah, like I've walked every day for 5 years, or I've walked every other day for 5 years, right? And think like, dang, like I have noticed some major change in my life in the right direction, in a positive direction. So yeah, I think the idea with this podcast, this dialogue, this recording is just continue to do it for myself and for other people. I think, these kind of conversations, man, I think people really do appreciate deep conversations, and you don't always get to have them. And I think a big part of the reason I appreciate podcasts so much is like I get to listen to these other people have deep conversations. Again, I'm not a participant, but it is really nice to hear, deep conversations at all levels, so readily available. Whereas, in person, just life, man, circumstances, you don't have time. Sometimes it's not the right moment. Like if you're going to talk about something heavy, it might not be the right moment, or they might not have the capacity to do so. Whatever the case, life kind of gets in the way of deep conversations, especially these days. But I think there's this hunger for it, there's this thirst for it, and people have talked about this before, so it's definitely not my own idea, but there's genuine desire for long-form dialogue. Being open and honest and sharing what you really like, what you're really thinking. People really appreciate that because, again, they don't get it much in their day-to-day life. So, I lost my train of thought on why I brought that up. But, overall, just talking about consistency with this. So, here I am. It's been cool. It's been a good week. It's been a tiring week, let me say that, but I'm glad to be here at the moment doing this. But anyways, there are some things that I listed out, so I guess I'll just get into those and kind of see how the rest of this goes. Again, learning on the fly, trying to just do and not worry about, quality, yes, but direction, structure, be loose with that. Be open to whatever happens. I think that's valuable. Like sometimes we can kind of get in our own way and say, we're not ready to be on stage. We're not ready to put this out there. It's not right. More touches, more edits, yada, yada, yada. And there's value to that, obviously, right? You don't want to just do things raw all the time. But be okay with, rough drafts. Be okay with one takes and let it fly. If it crashes and burns, so be it. But you never know, it could go far. And then you build on it from there. So I guess some advice, some wise words there. But anyways, let's get to the things that I wrote down. I wrote down hanging out with the other teachers, and I already kind of talked about that, but that was nice just to connect, hear their experiences, hear about what they're currently dealing with, going through, and being able to relate and connect on that was cool yesterday. I don't get to hang around them often, just because during the day, like, I am quite busy, and any breaks that I have, whatever, like, I try to take to myself because I need them at this point, at this time. So it was nice to connect and just hang out outside of the professional setting. Another thing that I've been kind of big on recently, and I've mentioned it before, but related to doing hard things is, kind of doing hard things, but then also doing the scary things too. Like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm kind of nervous. I'm kind of scared, right? Like, nothing dangerous or life-threatening or violent, of course, but an easy example to think of is making a move on somebody that you could be interested in, or asking somebody an uncomfortable question, something like that, where you really don't know what's gonna happen, how it could play out, but I guess just going for it anyways. So that's kind of that's kind of been a big thing I've been trying to push myself on recently, and many instances of that. I've had instances where I'll just make I guess I'll just be honest, like, alrighty, my bad, another situation. I was messing around with my AirPod, and it actually cut off the recording because I'm recording this on my iPhone, but I have a mic attached, connected to it. But then messing with the AirPod, I guess, threw off the whole thing. But that's put away. But what I had been talking about was doing the scary thing. And the example that I was going to provide, I think I had been talking about being a little bit more active when it comes to dating and just feeling out that whole situation, that part of life. And yeah, being comfortable reaching out to people, asking people directly, if they're interested in a hangout or having a conversation, whatever the case may be, like just the initial step of reaching out to somebody, I'm sure many of us can relate, is nerve-wracking. It's interesting. At least speaking for myself, the mind immediately when you have the thought is like, oh yeah, this might be a cool idea. I kind of want to hit up this person, reach out, whatever, make my intentions known or what I'm thinking known. And then immediately after that, you're kind of like, I shouldn't do it. They're probably going to think this. They're probably going to say this. The mind just races to come up with all of these imaginary scenarios of what could happen, which is interesting. And for me, many of them are like, no, don't do it because of this or that. And, for a big part of my life, I've always succumbed to that, and I've really beat myself up for it. Like, I'm like, man, why are you such a little bitch, man? Excuse my language, but that's kind of how my thoughts be sometimes. Like, bro, just do it. Like, who gives a fuck? And I try to tell myself all these things, but, for much of my life, it hasn't worked out. I've always kind of taken a step back and like, I'll pass, whatever. And it's so funny that I say it like this, because I was literally just listening to Chris Williamson. I've mentioned him many times, but he's a big podcast that I listen to. And he just did a recap of things that he's learned over the past year that really stood out to him. And one of them was this idea that you cannot think your way out of a feeling problem. You actually have to act. And I guess my example is actually quite a good example. Like, here I am trying to convince myself, like, oh yeah, if you just do it, you'll be all right. Like, yeah, maybe they will reject you, or maybe you'll get a confrontational response if you're talking to somebody about something serious, different situation than hitting up a potential suitor. But you're not gonna, like, if the goal is to be able to do it, right? Like, that is essentially the goal for me. Like, I just want to be able to approach somebody. I want to be able to ask somebody a hard question and feel comfortable in that situation. And so if your goal is that, then the only way out of it is to do it, right? You're not going to convince yourself in the head. You need to be able to do it, and not only just do it, but you need to be able to do it enough to where you have evidence and proof that you can do it, actually. And that's where confidence comes from. So, yeah, just doing the scary things. And, funny enough, like, I have noticed this in myself. Like, I'm very much more willing to be very upfront and say what it is that's on my mind. Speak honestly. It's still very hard. I'm not like an expert at it. I'm not like, my muscle isn't super fit, super big, super toned, whatever you want to describe it. But the muscle is there, and it's definitely something that I intend to continue developing. There's many instances where I find it to be difficult still, but I guess the point with all of this is, like, you come across something that you're scared of, but you want to do it, right? Again, something within reason. The only way is through, really. Like, you have to move forward. You have to act. You have to try. You have to demonstrate physically that you can endure whatever it is that you're a little bit scared of. So that's kind of been a big part of my life. Again, the idea is just, if you're scared, just do it and see what happens. Like the way I described it to one of my good friends recently, shout out BJ, man. I told him, and we had a good conversation about this. It's like, just do it, remove yourself from the situation, and just see what happens, right? Don't get attached to the consequences. Yeah. So I'll kind of just leave it at that. Another thing that I just wanted to touch upon, I guess this is a good opportunity. I wanted to talk about Bitcoin. I had a good conversation, again, with my guy BJ recently about this, last week actually. And you could probably have a very, very long, in-depth conversation about it, but I just wanted to just share my piece on it and share what I've been thinking about recently with everything that's been going on around us. So one of the questions that I've been meditating on recently is the idea of, like, who actually holds your money, right? Like, let's say you're an average person and you've accumulated a good sum of money that you consider your savings, right? Or your family wealth, whatever the case may be. And everybody has to make the decision of where they're going to store that money, right? Like, in this day and age, most people probably have bank accounts. Not everybody, of course, but most people probably have a bank account with some type of institution. If you live in the United States, probably the case for most of the world. I know not all parts of the world have access to bank accounts. But anyways, speaking in the context of the United States, most people pick a bank, and that's where they store their funds. And the reason I've been meditating on that question is because you really have to ask yourself, like, do you feel secure with this institution holding your money, right? And you might ask, well, what are the possibilities that you could run into? And some easy examples to consider would be like bankruptcy, some corruption or some fraud or some criminal activity that gets that institution in trouble. Or even in today's context, like, let's say you say something that people are not a fan of, and then people try to distance themselves from you. You could run into a situation where the bank is like, oh, sorry, you can't access your funds at the moment because of such and such, right? Maybe the reason is legitimate, or maybe the reason isn't legitimate. So it's a really interesting question to ponder, like, who holds your money? Bank of America, Chase, Capital One? Is it in a local credit union? And then for the people that hold stocks and all that kind of stuff, is it with Fidelity, Robinhood, Webull? There's so many different, places that help people with these transactions. So it is quite interesting to ask who holds your money. A recent thing to consider in all this is the FTX whole situation, right? Like, a decent amount of people, I don't know the details exactly, but let's say some people had their money, holding assets on this exchange known as FTX. And if you haven't kept up with the story, check it out if you're interested in this kind of stuff. But essentially, the people that were running this company and a couple other ones were involved in some shady deals, or not deals, but just being really shady with the money that they had, right? And kind of it's essentially a big Ponzi scheme, I guess you could describe it as. But again, just look into the details if you're interested. And yeah, a lot of people lost money, as a result of this. So the Bitcoin people, they're the ones that are posing this question, like, who do you want to hold your money? And the idea with Bitcoin is that, assuming you can purchase the coins and you can successfully transfer them to essentially what is a wallet, right? In the Bitcoin world, it's referred to as a cold storage. Bitcoin is a digital asset, but it's verified across the world. it can be verified because, again, it's a public ledger, so people will be able to recognize that this amount of Bitcoin belongs to this place, which is essentially your cold wallet, and you can do whatever you need to with those funds. And think of it like as a USB. It's probably like this is like a rudimentary explanation of it, right? But that's kind of how I think about it. Like, it actually looks like a USB. You plug it in kind of like a USB, and your Bitcoin is held there, right? And so the idea is you have, let's say, full custody of your funds. And if you had your life savings in Bitcoins, then you could say that you have full custody of your life funds. And, it's really interesting to think about, at least for me, like, if I needed to just move somewhere right away, could I do it and still have access to my life savings, right? If you have all your money with a bank, then it might take a couple days to get that money. There might be some fees involved to transfer those funds to, let's say you're moving internationally, you might need to, there might be some transfer fees to get that money from one place to another. So that's something to consider. Maybe it's not a couple days, maybe it's a couple weeks, maybe you can't access all your funds. Maybe you just kind of run into just some weird logistical administrative situations that delay the time it would take for you to move, right? If you needed to move or you just wanted to move. Let's say tomorrow I'm going to start a new life in Colombia. Like, I got all my life savings on this cold wallet, cold storage, and I'm ready to go. So that's really something that is quite interesting to think about. The question is, who do you want holding your money? Or another one would be like, do you trust the current place that holds your money to be around 20 years, 30 years, maybe more? Do you trust them to stay ethical and follow the rules, follow the laws? Like, are the people in charge of these companies good people? Like, do you trust those people to steer their company in the right direction, to make good choices, to be ethical, to follow the law, to follow regulations, whatever that may be? Really interesting. And then another thing that it's still something that I'm really trying to formalize in my brain, like really get it down, but is this idea of being able to transact with anybody at any time is quite powerful. It's a little bit hard to grasp at first, but I think this is a good opportunity to work out like what I understand of this. And so essentially I think like right now most people are only able to transact with each other so long as they have the same currency, right? Like, most of the people in the I don't know, probably a decent amount of countries use the dollar, right? I don't know how many exactly, but let's say it's just the United States, right? A person, if I went to Argentina right now, like I probably would be able to, just because maybe they want the dollar. But let's say I wanted to exchange in their own currency, I would have to, go through a process to exchange my money into their money. And so you can imagine this happening in many other instances, situations. But with something like Bitcoin, I could move to Mongolia and they would be perfectly willing to accept Bitcoin as well, because they get the same benefit of being able to hold on to this currency, transact with anybody that they might need to. Maybe they're not local to them. Maybe they want to, I don't know, send money to a relative that's far, far away, and they have a currency, something that is of value that they can send to their person. And then you can imagine like more and more people across the world, what could you say, like taking their current wealth, their current assets, converting it into Bitcoin. And more people are transacting with this currency, and then if you're a holder and you believe that this is a possibility for the future, then the reasonable idea is that Bitcoin will continue to, I don't know how you say it, just go up in value, essentially. And people will understand that it is actually a valuable thing to hold. So that's kind of how I thought about it. It's really interesting. Again, basic ideas that you'll be able to transact with anyone at any time. Like the way I heard it, maybe I've mentioned this before, I'm not sure, but I heard it from this guy named CoffeeZilla, and he was like, and I'm sure others have said the same thing, I can send $1 billion to somebody sitting across from me and somebody sitting across the world, right, for the same cost, which is quite powerful. Again, you don't have to go through a third party, right? I think that was one of the big things of like creating a digital currency like this, is that you remove the need for a third party that, benefits from your transaction. Maybe they take a little bit small percentage and making a lot of money, and again, you don't have full custody. So yeah, quite interesting. So just a little bit of thoughts. I could say more, but I don't want to get too deep, because it is a topic that you should approach carefully, and I think one more thing that is a good opportunity to say is, maybe I've mentioned this before in the recent one. It's been a while, so I kind of forgot. My working memory is taxed these days, so forgive me. But yeah, Bitcoin is distinct from essentially all the other cryptocurrencies, and the idea is that all the other cryptocurrencies, pretty much 99.9% of them should be considered as securities, and essentially that means that they operate like companies, right? Like there are people that are in charge of them that dictate, choices, that make choices, policies, whatever your case may be. Whereas Bitcoin is treated like as a commodity, right? Steel, wood, resources that don't necessarily belong to anyone, but anybody can hold and have access to and have some store of value in that. So this is especially relevant for people that are not so exposed to the Bitcoin space, because you hear the word cryptocurrency and that's just such a loaded word, then more often than not you're probably going to tend towards the stigma around it. It's like, oh, people just trying to make money, people should get rich quick, whatever you want to describe it as. So I think it's worth making that distinction. It's worth making that distinction. So again, Bitcoin is a commodity. Pretty much all the other cryptocurrencies should be treated as securities, things that are controlled by one person or a small group of people. So something to think about in holding your money. But anyways, that's Bitcoin. Again, I'm a big believer in it, just to be open and honest, but I am open to new ideas. Like if somebody comes across and makes a compelling argument as to why Bitcoin is a scam, or whatever, right? I haven't come across that yet. Like most of it is really just like unbased criticisms. So if somebody makes a compelling argument, I'm definitely open to changing my thoughts, changing my perspectives. So anyways, take a quick pause there for a quick drink. Right. Yeah, you know what? I'll take a quick bathroom break too while I'm at it. Alrighty, we're back. So that was nice too. I actually got to use the restroom and have a quick snack break. I'm hungry and tired, so I'm having a little bit of alcohol while I'm doing this. Just a little bit. It was like one shot of tequila and some Minute Maid watermelon. Actually kind of tasted nice. Pretty much like a cocktail, honestly. You could pass that off as a cocktail if you just added like a couple more things, give it a little bit more life. But yeah, and I'm pretty much at 50 minutes right now. So yeah, I guess I'm messing up all kinds of stuff. Here we go. Let me get this mic right. I'm gonna pause it again. No, I don't need to pause it. It sounded like the mic was being weird, but it looks like it's pretty good now. Sorry, guys. If you made it this far, thank you for your patience. Such is the nature of these things, right? Very low production, but honestly, for me, I guess this is a good opportunity to say, like, it's more so important about getting the job done, right? I will aim to improve over time, like make it more high quality, higher production, but for now, it's going to be just rough drafts, but being okay with that, like I mentioned earlier, be okay with the rough drafts. But yeah, anyways, all good. I'm back at it. I had a couple snacks, so I feel rejuvenated. This has been quite long, and I still got a couple more things I'd like to touch on, but which is cool. I'm gonna get past an hour. So the next thing that I have been thinking about a lot, and I'm sure many people have heard about it, come across it at some point. That's really, really, really interesting. But I also will acknowledge at the front, like, it does touch upon politics, and as such is the nature of much of our politics these days, it is quite divisive, depending on, what side you lean towards, what side you tend towards. But as for me, again, I do my best to be an independent person, to take information and perspectives from anywhere I can get them. Anybody that speaks, from good faith, I think is a good way to describe it, to speak like intellectually honestly. I'm open to hearing, what your thoughts are. So anyways, the Twitter file stuff, if you're not familiar, for just a little bit of context, again, I'm sure most people have heard of this, but for me to summarize too, I guess it's good. Like, Elon Musk pretty much bought Twitter recently, like in the past couple months, and one of the biggest things that his focus has been is limiting the amount of censorship that the company does, right? And being a proponent of free speech. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I think I'm a big believer in free speech, obviously with some principles and guidelines in place. I think that we already have them. So I think it would be wise for all of us as a people to revisit that, discuss that openly, respectfully, to see what it is, why it's relevant, why it's something that is important to hold on to in the context of human history, in the context of what we know. And censorship plays a role in anything, right? Like, it usually isn't good. So, and we know that there are certain things that we want to censor. Like, for example, one thing that Elon Musk has done is limited child pornography, which apparently, again, I don't know the details of this, unfortunately, but it seems to be that prior to his acquisition of Twitter, there was a good amount happening. So, and since he's taken over, they've kind of put a decent stop on that. So that's an example of censorship in the right direction. But again, this is really a philosophical question, like, what should we allow and what should we not allow? Who knows if we'll ever get to a definitive answer, but again, we have a rich history of conversation around it, so I think it would be wise for us as a people, as a society, to revisit that. But anyways, so that's what Elon's approach has been, his philosophy has been since purchasing Twitter. And in the process of all of this, he's been releasing what is referred to as the Twitter files. And essentially what this is like a lot of internal correspondence from high-level execs on, decisions on what they will allow on the platform and things that they're trying to, I guess, all kinds of things, like label as disinformation, misinformation, people that they want to boot off the platform, things that they deem, inappropriate, not allowed. And a lot of these decisions are falling in the hands of, people, small groups of people that, maybe you can't say this definitively, but act in such a way that demonstrates their political leaning, right? And I guess the whole contention with this is like, when you have what is considered a public platform, you don't want there to be a thumb on the scale for any one side or the other, right? Like, you don't want one group to have that power to say, we're not going to allow certain things to come out because either it makes us look bad or it makes our opponents look good. You know, we want people to speak. The alternative to that is we want people to speak openly and honestly. We want all the information to be out there. We don't want to hold anything back. Or at least, you know, be openly putting our thumb on the scale of a situation, of a story, of an event, whatever that may be. And Elon has, and a variety of journalists so far, I've seen Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss releasing the Twitter files. I'm not sure if they have anyone else involved, but those have been the people so far. I only read the first one all the way through. The rest of them I haven't had time to look in through depth yet, but essentially they're like 20 to 30 long tweet threads, pretty much breaking a story of a situation. So I know the first one was essentially about, what was the first one about? Dang it, I can't think of it. Oh yeah, it was about the Hunter Biden story, okay? And then I know that they did one about the removal of Donald Trump. That one, man, that's really interesting. Essentially, what I got from that is they knew that he didn't violate any policies, but they had wanted to boot him anyway. So a lot of the correspondence reveals that they were just trying to come up with a justification that would suffice to the public and to people that would understand the situation, which is really interesting, man. Of course, right? Like, jeez. If you lean left, you're probably going to be like, yeah, we should have just gotten rid of Donald Trump from the get-go. Like, why did it take that long? Like, this guy is promoting all kinds of stuff that we deem harmful, so we don't think he should be on the platform. But then you've got these Twitter execs saying, again, maybe you look into the details. I could be speaking inaccurately here. But you've got these Twitter execs saying, like, he didn't violate any policies, but we still want to get him off anyways. Like, that's pretty... I don't want to make any judgment on that. I guess to avoid that, it's really something to consider and meditate on. Like, wow. Even though society deemed that as the right decision, like, was it really right to do that? And who are these people to use their view on the world, their view on the situation, and say, you know what, we think he's harmful, so we're going to remove him? Like, again, given that he didn't violate any rules, their opinion, their feeling on the situation was that this was a justified choice. And that's something that's really, obviously decisions have to be made, right? Like, people got to do what they got to do, but I think it's worth talking about and seeing, like, was that really the right choice, and are we acting morally, ethically, even though we would like to be, or we feel like we're doing the right thing? Like, is it really? I guess that's a good question. Like, is it really? And of course, in all this, like, you get both sides, like the right, interestingly enough, I don't know, it's really interesting. Like, people on the right will say, like, oh, it's great because it's exposing, like, the Democratic, establishment party, excuse me, whatever you want to call it. It's exposing them and their influence on all kinds of things and their connection with big tech. And then you've got the people on the left saying, like, ever since Elon has taken over Twitter, hate messages and hate speech and all kinds of stuff have come up more. Or people announcing that they're leaving Twitter, which is so... It's just funny to me that people do that. Like, oh, ever since Elon Musk bought Twitter, hate speech essentially hate speech has gone up so much, and all these bad actors are now posting again, or now back on the platform. This is not a place that I want to be, so I'm leaving Twitter. Follow me here, yada yada yada, which is quite interesting. I mean, maybe this is a rudimentary understanding of it, but it's like, if you don't want to be on the platform, I think nobody is forcing you to. And maybe that's a little bit harsh, but I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what people have to say about that, like on the hate speech entirely. Like, I get it that maybe there are certain things that you shouldn't say to a person, that if you were like scolding a person and using profanity and slurs and all kinds of stuff in somebody's face, like, maybe there's an argument to that being a crime, something that should have some consequences. But then I also imagine it from like the Stoic perspective too, where maybe if it's me personally and I have somebody screaming in my face all kinds of crazy nonsense, things that don't even make sense, things that aren't true, calling me names, calling me slurs, based on my race, based on how I look, I believe that there is still power in not giving that any energy, not responding to it at all, walking away. Again, this is assuming that none of this is violent, right? And I understand that these situations can sometimes involve violence or confrontation. But then also, I mean, yes, I get hate speech is harmful. It can incite violence and hurt people. But at the end of the day, if somebody's just screaming in my face, like, I have in my view, and based on what I understand about the Stoics, is that like, you have a choice on how you are going to respond to that. Are you going to give into it? Are you going to feed that energy? Or are you just going to be like, wow, like, that's wild that they're even talking to me like that. I'm just going to walk away. I'm not going to give this no mind. I'm going to continue about my day. That's kind of my personal view on it. And again, I'd be interested to hear what people feel about that, because I know, I don't know, the left, I have my critiques of the left, honestly, and maybe you can sense this, maybe you can't, but I do have my critiques of the left, and it's a really interesting spot for me to be in, because I agree with a lot of the policy ideas and goals of the left. For example, I think student loans are pretty harmful to most people. I think nonviolent drug offenders should be released. Like, they don't need to be serving these long sentences in prison for something that at this point is pretty clear to be not harmful, right? And the punishment does not fit the crime, essentially. And then you've got this situation where, I mean, here's another interesting thing to consider, and that I've been meditating on also, is we just exchanged Brittany Griner for what people describe as a Russian arms dealer, somebody that sold harmful weapons to a variety of organizations, countries across the world that have done harm. And it's a situation where Brittany Griner got in trouble for having possession of some cannabis products in a country that doesn't allow that. So if you're willing to go to bat for her and bring her back, what are you going to do about all the people that are serving currently in the United States many years, life sentences, whatever you want to call it? What are you going to do about them for similar non-violent drug offenses, possession, use, whatever? I don't know the details of it, but I think most people know what I mean by that. What are you doing about that? Do you care as much about that? So, I forgot why I brought that up, but let me try to connect. Yes. Essentially, I was saying that I have my critiques of the left, and it hurts me because I do agree with a lot of the policies, and that was one of them. Right, there you go. The idea that every nonviolent drug offender should either be serving a far less sentence than they currently are, or they should just be freed altogether and their records expunged. I agree that we should try to do something about wealth inequality. I agree that people of color have had a historically harder situation, especially in certain places for most of the United States history, and that's something to contend with and something to pay attention to. But the way that the left has acted and tried to advocate for their issues over the past couple of years, it just has felt so, I don't know, there's a lot of finger wagging. There's a lot of hubris too, honestly. There's a lot of like, if you would just listen to us, then everything would be just fine. If everything that we're advocating for is for the good of humanity, is for the good of the people that have been systemically oppressed for human history, and if we had power, if our philosophy and our view of the world was disseminated, we would be much better. And maybe there's some truth to that. I think it is valuable to talk about social and racial issues as much as you can. But again, my critique is the way that it is being done, the execution of it. The ideas I believe in, the execution I am highly critical of. So, and I do my best to not get emotional about this, to not be fueled by my critiques. But I am trying to be more comfortable speaking honestly about that. And again, and this is probably something I'll dedicate more time to in future instances, but as it relates to the Twitter files, which I've been talking about, people on the left are saying that Elon is, again, promoting harmful speech. He's enabling harmful speech. He is a right-wing actor at this point because, again, the prior Twitter execs leaned left, pretty clearly leaned left, had close collaboration with the Democratic Party, the Biden team, right? So they view his exposing of the Twitter files like as antagonistic to the left. So you've had many left-leaning journalists criticize him. It's kind of funny because a lot of them say the same things, right? Like, this is just a billionaire doing whatever. They say the same things, which is interesting, man. For me, which is one of the next things I wanted to bring up, is the idea of transparency. We live in a time, in a world where you can't truly trust anymore. At least in my view, I can't, because I don't know unless I really know you. And even then, it's still really hard because when you've been burned so many times, led astray so many times, you just question everything, right? And I'm not the type of person to just so easily fall into one camp or another. Like, no matter how compelling your argument is, I am open to new ideas, but I'm open to listening to your argument, honestly, but I am going to take that information and incorporate it into what I've been exposed to and other things, alternative views, ideas, and see for myself like what actually makes sense based on my experiences, based on the evidence that I've gathered. So speaking with confidence is nice, but you're not going to convince me solely based off of that. And for me, I view what Elon is doing with all of this is just, and he said this himself, is just the idea of promoting transparency. Like, the people deserve to know, like, the rationale behind these decisions. And here's another thing that the left-leaning people will say that defend Elon for doing what he's doing, or that support him for what he's doing, is like, oh, you're just cheerleading for a right-wing billionaire, you're just fangirling right-wing billionaire, you're just dick riding, whatever you want to call it. But who else at this level, at this stature, is promoting transparency and saying this is something that is probably important for the human people that we should be thinking about. So I think it's important. I think it's like WikiLeaks. It's like Julian Assange exposing that the United States committed war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's something they probably wanted to keep under the rug and away from the American public, but somebody like Julian Assange made that known, and he doesn't really get anything out of it other than his name attached to this, I would say pretty monumental moment in history. But if anything, his life has been totally turned upside down, and they've just been going after this guy all for exposing something that he felt like the American public should know. Again, you make the argument that we are the taxpayers. We fund a large, if not the entire part of the military, and we should have some sense, some understanding of what they're doing with that money. So, transparency. I believe in it. I support that. If people view that as cheerleading or enabling a right-wing billionaire, I guess I would encourage you to really reconsider, do you not want transparency in the world? Do you not want people with high-level access and power and money and connections to not be transparent with their actions and move in the shadows, to move in silence and just trust them on their word that they're acting in good faith? That's, if you can live life like that, it's pretty, I don't know, that's really something. The next thing, I guess there's not too much to say to this other than just to say it. It's a quote that I heard through Chris Williamson. Again, it was his recap podcast where he talked about things that he's learned. And it was about, he mentioned this while talking about not paying too much attention to what other people are saying or thinking about you. And it's from Rick Sanchez, Rick and Morty. Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer. And that's actually something I find pretty interesting. I won't say too much of my own personal thoughts, but I think I would recommend people to really think about that. Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer. So your critiques of me are, not so, they don't carry as much weight because I know what you support, and what you support is, let's say, maybe it's phony, or I know that you haven't really thought through what it is that you're thinking as deeply as I have. So I know that I'm not gonna give your critique or your opinion that much weight, essentially. Anyways, getting close to the end here, which is good. It's quite a lot of time. I do feel, it is tough when you're by yourself, but I do have a lot of energy. I'm also kind of tired at the same time, I'll be honest, but if you've made it this far, I appreciate you. I really do. And yeah, let's wrap this thing up. I'm close to it. Another thing that I wanted to mention is just kind of funny thing about what I've been doing recently, but essentially I've been really binging podcasts, man. I don't know. It's not a bad thing because I am actually learning a lot. So it's just kind of funny that I'm able to do all of this because a lot of the podcasts I'm listening to are 2-3 hours, 4 hours sometimes. But anyways, one of them recently being Ed Calderon and Lex Friedman. As if you've made it this far, if you've listened to this, I'm a big listener of Lex Friedman, and he had Ed Calderon who talked about, the title of it was Mexican Drug Cartels, but they talked about so much with all of this. It was a 4-hour conversation, so my goodness, all kinds of stuff like the philosophy of people, social engineering, violence, preparation, being able to navigate sticky situations, potentially violent situations. the nature of drug cartels, the nature of these types of organizations, their involvement with the city and the local people and the government in Mexico in general and the direction of the country is like, goodness gracious, like, it's really something to hear about somebody that is like deep into that part of the world, because as Americans and maybe other places, you forget that Mexico is literally on our southern border, and it's just really like, it's popping off, to say the least, man. Like, you really got these large organizations, these criminal organizations that operate in so many different parts of the day-to-day life that I don't know, it is a huge thing to contend with, and there are no easy solutions, there are no easy answers. So what are you gonna do, right? So that was a really interesting conversation. I'm part Mexican, my mom is Mexican, so I do feel a connection. There is a deep sense of pride and appreciation for being part of the Mexican community, the Mexican people. So that was a really good conversation. Highly recommend people check it out. Ed Calderon, man, like, to have gone through that whole experience, to see and operate in that world as like a counter cartel person, specialist, whatever you want to call it, like, to be, I'm sure his mental is all over the place, because, you know, me just teaching, my mental is all over the place. So to deal with violence at scale, I mean, I can't imagine. So that was a great podcast, really, really deep conversation, really good conversation. And you know what? The other one that I'll wrap up with is, actually, I got two more, is Joe Rogan and David Goggins. That one came up, I believe, this past week as well. But David Goggins is a cool guy, man. I think most people know him as like a motivational person. Like, he's just like, probably got all these clips, got all these videos on YouTube, TikTok, whatever, encouraging people to get up and do something, like exercise, go do the hard thing, and just power through, right? Like, no matter if you're tired, no matter how beaten down you are, just get up, power through, no matter what you got to do, get it by any means. And he is motivating for a lot of people. But in this recent podcast, he's been on Joe before, but in this recent one, I personally learned a few things about him. I think he had a new book, so a lot of this comes up in the new book. I can't remember the name. But what I learned about him is that he had a pretty traumatic upbringing. So he had a father that was abusive to his mom, and then following that, his mom kind of got herself into similar situations, and then also had her own mental struggles that was hard for him to contend with and deal with. His own personal upbringing after that, like being an adult, trying to navigate he had like a couple stints in the military, like in military type settings, let's say. I don't know the details exactly, but, you know, just coming across a whole bunch of adversity there, breaking bones and legs, and getting to the point where he's at now. Like, essentially, he's been presented with many opportunities to just fold, and throughout all of it, he's kind of just risen up from the ashes. And for me personally, it really does resonate, and it is motivational. It's not, and he'll even explain this himself, like, you can't rely on other people to motivate you. Like, it just has to be something within. Like, you just gotta get the fuck up and go do what you gotta do. And, you know, I see this, like, another example I see this is my parents. You know, they're working really hard right now, and they're getting old. They still got some youth to them, but they are getting old. But they're still working hard, man. Like, they're not doing easy jobs. Both of them involve like a decent amount of physical labor, waking up early, long days. So I see that in them, and it is, you know, I'm sure in their head, like, fuck, I don't want to wake up this early, go do go do this thing, but I know I have to. So seeing my parents do that is also really motivating. It's really the same mentality as David Goggins to me, in my interpretation. Like, just get the fuck up and do what you gotta do because you gotta do it. And so that was really cool to listen to. And then the last one, Andrew Schultz and Chris Williamson, they did one recently. Well, I actually got two more. But yeah, Andrew Schultz and Chris Williamson, really cool because Chris is like, you know, he's good at what he does. He's a good interview. He's a good conversation. He speaks confidently. He knows what he's talking about. But he is a little bit more formal. Andrew Schultz, he's also a really smart guy on the come up, like really well known now. But he's a comedian by trade, so he brings that levity. He adds life and funny and jokes. So it's a really, really good conversation on just society, culture, men, which is another interesting conversation, especially these days, like what it means to be a man, how to operate, how to move, how the world views men these days. So that was cool. And then the last one that I'll mention before I get out of here, as you can probably tell my voice, but maybe you like this. Maybe some people like this. I've had compliments on my voice before. But anyways, Lex Friedman and Michael Malice, they did one. That's always a good time. I can tell these guys are really good friends, and Michael's a really smart guy. They're both, I want to say, from Ukraine, so they have that connection to Ukraine and Russia and the history of the people there. And so they got into a lot of cool things. Essentially, they revisited the Russian Revolution, Stalin, Lenin, Marxism, socialism, free speech, censorship, censorship, which is another thing, self-censorship. The idea I'll just quickly mention is like, I'm not going to say what's on my mind because of fear of me getting in trouble by the people around me, whether it's just like reputation damage or they can actually, you know, report me to some police, secret police, whatever it is, and be like, oh, this person, they're, you know, committing crimes, or they're speaking their intentions against us, and we need to do away with them. And that can lead down all kinds of rabbit holes, dark, evil, right? Doesn't take much to see. And a really big part of this conversation is the Russian Revolution and the lives that were lost, the damage that was done, the torture, just the idea of living under a totalitarian regime that controlled everything, that controlled speech and thought. It's really something, and that's not the only example. Obviously, we also know Nazi Germany, but then you've also got Mao's China, and then you've got North Korea in the current day, and many other places too, and then you've got like Cambodia. So really good conversation, heavy, but again, because these guys are good friends, there's a lot of just random jokes mixed in between all of that. So yeah, I think that's a good that's been a good list. Those are the things that I've been listening to. A lot of great conversations. I really just binging all of them, which is cool. Again, I'll say it, like, I really appreciate this medium of communication. I've heard it a lot, and I think it's one of the reasons that motivates me to do this. Is like, it just gives you the opportunity to connect with people, to put your voice out there, to put your ideas out there, and, you know, whoever wants to listen and connect is good, is there. And then for me also, like, again, the idea that you could leave life right now. I shared this on my Instagram. I think these recordings, you know, if I ever were to leave this world, you know, sooner than I expected, this will leave behind something, at the very least. People that I care about, people that care about me, you'll have something to hear and listen to. So, anyways, if you made it this far, please let me know. Hit me up. Tell me about how your day's been. How you doing? What you up to? If you want to get on the pod, holler at me, man, because I'm happy to do this. And I guess I'll just quickly say that I do want to start reaching out to people for conversations, because I do want to hear from people. There's so many cool people in my life. I would love to get on here, to dive deep and you know, get in the conversation. So that's something that I'll be doing in the near term. But again, if you made it this far, if you fucking with this, let me know. Please let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you're doing, what's up in life. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you next time.